Browns back on the practice field here on Tuesday after a day off on Monday. Let's start, though, with some players that we heard from before practice. Juan Thornhill, who, of course, played for the Kansas City Chiefs, won a Super Bowl in 2022 with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going back to Kansas City this week. And Mary Kay, he basically said, look, no disrespect to the Kansas City Chiefs, but he hopes last year was sort of the last part of their run because he wants his new team to kind of get the torch passed to them and be the team that's in that Super Bowl every year.
Yeah, you know, you have to love the Super Bowl energy that Juan Thornhill brings to this team. He's been there a couple of times, 3 times. He's got a couple Super Bowl rings, and he is all about getting this team to the Super Bowl. He knows what it takes, and these guys listen to him.
And Ashley, I know you asked Kevin about this, and Juan was asked about this, to have a guy on your defense, especially as you're installing Jim Schwartz's scheme, who Jim has won a Super Bowl as well, but to have a guy in the back end of that defense, a leadership position, who's won a Super Bowl, know what it takes, it really does matter.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this so much with Juan Thornhill in particular, because I think when you have a coach saying something to you, that's one thing, and obviously a guy like Jim Schwartz is very well respected, but I think when you have a player who has been there, who has a couple of Super Bowl rings telling you something, I think it takes on a whole new meaning, because it's one of your peers who has been there, done that. So I definitely think you can tell that Juan Thornhill has kind of changed the energy of this defense.
Now, we also talked to Nick Chubb and Mary Kay. We've talked so much about his role expanding, but, I mean, it really is sort of barreling here towards the regular season, especially with Jerome Ford. We find out he's not going to practice this week, and so he's not going to play in Kansas City. We don't know when he's going to be ready. Nick Chubb's role and the amount of touches he's going to get, it just kind of keeps expanding.
Yeah, it really does. And now there is a little bit more uncertainty over it because Jerome Ford, over this last several weeks, was supposed to be taking on a lot of that Kareem Hunt role, that third down back role, catching the ball out of the backfield, spelling Nick Chubb on first and second down, and really getting ready to contribute a lot. And now that's a setback when you miss a lot of camp like that with a hamstring injury. And nobody's really seen him go out and do this in a game yet. So I do think that there will be more responsibility on Nick Chubb early on.
And I will say, Ashley, even though Nick never acts excited when he talks to us, I do get the sense that he's kind of excited to maybe unleash the full Nick Chubb experience.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, it sounds like, number one, which is unsurprising, I mean, Nick doesn't care how much he plays in the preseason. He's going to be ready to go. And I think Nick is one of those rare guys that they say something like that, and I have no doubt in my mind about it. I think we're going to see the full Nick Chubb experience come week 1. And yeah, I'm definitely interested. He seems very, I think, still excited about being more involved in the pass game and you know, seeing him on some of these third downs. Of course, we know Stump Mitchell, the running backs coach, thinks he could do it all. Of course, made the famous proclamation that we've talked about many times that he thinks Nick Chubb could have 1,000 yards receiving this year. So I definitely think you feel that little bit of excitement coming from Nick, even if he doesn't necessarily show that excitement in his interviews.
Now, we will note that Jordan Wilkins seems to be getting a lot of work right now with Nick Chubb obviously starting, Jerome Ford out. The new addition, Wilkins, is getting a lot of work. Mary Kay, not a real eventful practice today. There are a couple of guys. I know you noted this on Twitter. Anthony Schwartz is dealing with a hamstring, which of course is not great for a guy on the bubble. But a really light practice today. Not a ton happened in this one. Really kind of a walkthrough in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they're treating this as kind of a game week a little bit. So this was their lighter day of practice. And as you mentioned, they really didn't do a whole lot. There were not any real eye-popping plays. Austin Watkins made a nice big catch. The military was here watching today, and a lot of guys went over and signed autographs afterwards. So good for them for, we have to thank them for their service, and I, of course, was over there thanking them for their service. But so many guys spent time over there signing out autographs. That was great to see. It was one of the highlights of today because there wasn't much in terms of football.
Yeah, Ashley, as far as notes, the only thing I can think of is we saw Shelby Harris finally kind of work with the first team. Maybe that's happened before. This was the first time that I've noticed it, though, where Shelby was working with the first team defensive line. But again, you can feel this thing starting to turn towards regular season mode.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, this just felt like a typical Wednesday practice for what this will look like in the season. And of course, we can't watch those practices, but it is always their lighter days. So you definitely get the feel for them trying to, let's say, the final stage of ramping up towards the regular season. And yes, the Shelby Harris thing, notable because we had seen Jordan Elliott with that first team alongside Dalvin Tomlinson. So just another look, and maybe Shelby Harris is fully up to speed now, where they wanted him to be at this point anyway.
Well, our podcast listeners know you heard the phrase ramp up, so you got to take a drink now. It's just the rule. That's how we work. We'll have full coverage of the practice today and everything leading up to the Kansas City game on Saturday at cleveland.com/Browns. And a quick shout out to somebody standing behind the camera from Twinsburg High School shadowing Ashley. Aiden is with us, so shout out to Aiden as well. Again, check out cleveland.com/Browns for full coverage.